Hello, my name is Christopher Renstrom. I'm the creator of rulingplanets.com and Christopher Renstrom Astrology. And this week, I wanted to talk to you about Mars entering the zodiac sign of Leo on November 3rd. Mars, named after the Roman god of war, has a bit of a negative reputation in astrology. People often assume that it's all about fighting and combating and getting your way. And indeed, Mars is responsible for getting you the things that you want. Let's say you want to audition for a role. Let's say you want to push yourself like you've never pushed yourself before, like maybe training to run a marathon or something along those lines. Mars is the planet that will say, okay, yeah, let's do this, and so it will push you to learn those lines, to perfect your craft, to get up first thing in the morning and to train yourself to go the long distance. Mars, once committed to an activity that it's certain that you want, will not stop until you achieve your end. So this is basically what Mars is doing in an astrological chart. It's getting you what you want, and it's asserting yourself, and it's affirming yourself. Mars pushes us to the head of the line, and it doesn't think twice about elbowing its way and maybe stepping on other people's feet in order to get what it wants, in order to make sure that you come first. Now, Mars in Leo is a bit different from other Marses. That's because Mars in Leo has a sort of commanding aura, but it doesn't really have to say it. It doesn't really have to bark orders or say, servile person, come and get me what I want. All right. What a Mars in Leo does is basically it shows up and it gets what it wants. There's a supreme confidence with the Mars in Leo. There's an expectation that whatever it is that you want, you're going to go ahead and get it. And oftentimes without lifting a finger. Now, some of you out there with Mars and Leo might be like, I wish, but think about it for a moment. If you have Mars in Leo in your own astrological chart, how many times have you sat down at a restaurant meal and found that you've been served a larger portion than everyone else has? How many times have you gone and maybe pointed to a dessert at the dessert counter and you've been given a hefty piece? How many times when you've been in line, let's say waiting at the airport, have you maybe said to someone in front of you, oh, I have a flight to catch, and automatically the people get out of your way and let you forward to the top of the line, the front of the line of the ticketing agency? You might even have one or two strangers escort you and maybe even someone carry your baggage. There's just something about your command. There's just something about your poise that makes people want to do things for you. And that's because Mars in the zodiac sign of Leo, Mars in the zodiac sign of Kings, has no problem exercising its divine right. Now, the catch here, in order to make this Mars in Leo work, is that you have to be born under a zodiac sign that is naturally confident, that has no problem standing and maybe indicating something that it would like and watching people run around and try to go and fetch it for you. You have to be commanding with this. People have to feel like you're deserving. And when they come back and give you something, you have to be gracious. You have to say thank you and, oh, that was so wonderful of you. Or, I wouldn't have made my flight if it weren't for you all. All right. So the Mars in Leo depends on a very confident and gracious sun. But let's say you have a Mars in Leo and your sun isn't that confident. Your sun has a tendency to be a bit anxious or nervous. Maybe it feels too shy. It doesn't want to exercise that kind of authority. You're like, oh, no, 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 you have it. Or when people are willing to offer you a seat or their place in line, and you're like, oh, no, no, I'll wait. You may feel like you're being accommodating and you're being gracious, but there may be something because the sun isn't working in alignment with the Mars in Leo, there may be something about your demeanor that comes across as being a bit brusque. It comes across as being a bit ungracious. It might even come across as being a bit rude because someone offered you something, you said no, and they're kind of looking at you like, well, what's wrong with this seat? Or why aren't you accepting this gift? This is something that you might want to keep a lookout for and even kind of train yourself so that when someone does offer you something, that you take it and that you say thank you rather than, oh, no, 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 I'm fine. That way, the Mars is working with you, it's working for you rather than against. Because if you don't exude that confidence, much like the lion on the African plains, you will become the object of derision, and you may even be jumped and taken down by the different hyenas in your life. This is something that people born under Leo or have strong Leo energy in their charts know, that you have to exude the confidence, even if that's not what you're feeling inside. Lions spend a lot of time out in the open, and Leos subsequently live very open and exposed lives where people could prey upon their insecurities or their anxieties if they wanted to. So when you exude this confidence that comes with knowing that you have to live out in the open, then chances are people aren't going to mess with you and they're going to show you the honor and the respect that you deserve. Now, as I said, on November 3rd, Mars enters the zodiac sign of Leo. And indeed, this period of time from November 3rd to November 27th is going to be very important. It's going to give you this feeling that you can get what you want without having to push, without having to shove, or without having to elbow your way to the head of the line. That's because the sun is racing to catch up to Mars in the sky in order to form a trine. The sun will be in Sagittarius, Mars will be in Leo. These are two fire signs. So with the sun racing to catch up to its trine to Mars in Leo, what's going to happen is that there's going to be sort of this rush of solar energy, this rush of fire energy that's been coursing through your chart. It's going to be coursing through your horoscope. And this feeling of racing to catch up, and that with every passing day, you're becoming more sure, more exuberant, more enthusiastic. This feeling will peak on November 27th when the sun actually forms its trine to Mars. However, after November 27th, that energy will decrease. That's because after the sun forms its trine to Mars, Mars is beginning to slow down in the heavens. Indeed, Mars comes to a full and complete stop on December 6th. That's because on December 6th, Mars turns retrograde and begins its backwards motion. This is why you want to complete any task you have to complete. You want to score the win or plant the flag by November 27th, when the sun is at its peak energy trining Mars. After that, that's when the energy starts diminishing, the momentum begins to slow, and your confidence, your verve, and your drive begin to dissipate. Now, for those of you born under the zodiac sign of Aries, this period of time that I'm talking about, this time between November 3rd and November 27th, this is your time to shine. So don't blow it. Okay, now, I know that's a little bit rough to say, but Aries is always telling themselves things like that when fortunes are looking positive. There's always this feeling of like, here's my time. This is my opportunity. Don't blow it, Aries. And that's because Aries will always be driven by a sense of urgency, that it has to get out there in front, that it has to maintain its lead. Where other fire signs will bask around in the rays of glory, Aries is always driven by an urgency. and anxiety, if you will, that you don't have a lot of time to get the things done that you want to get done. It's kind of like one of those game shows where shoppers are told that they can have whatever it is that they want in the store, but they only have 5 minutes to fill up their carts. Now, you can either be one of those people who grabs everything in sight, and fills up the cart, and there goes the 5 minutes, and you have to live with what you grabbed, or you can be one of those people who knows exactly what you want. Now that you have free access to the store, you've memorized the aisles that you need to get to, and you know exactly where it is that you want to go. This is the difference between an Aries who suddenly finds themselves on the spot and grabbing whatever it is they want, and another type of Aries, which is very calculated, very skillful, and has already targeted exactly what it wants. This is the sort of mindset, Aries, that you want to be in, that you don't want to cave into feelings of urgency and anxiety, that you want to exercise that cool under pressure that people born under Aries are famous for having. And you want to have the presence of mind to focus on a clear-cut objective. But also remember that when Mars turns retrograde on December 6th, this is going to impact you very powerfully because Mars is your ruling planet. This is not only when you will experience a drop in willpower, but you can also be susceptible. In other words, you're vulnerable to being talked into giving up something that you have. So what you want to do is sort of brace yourself against any feelings of discouragement, any feelings of intimidation, and any feelings of seduction, i.e., someone tempting you with something that you don't have in order to get you to give up what you do have. This always brings to mind the old adage, a bird in hand is better than two in the bush. And basically, what that means is you're better off with what you know that you have, that bird in hand, than you are trading it for two in the bush that aren't as secure and that you don't have such a firm grasp on. This is something to definitely keep in mind when Mars turns retrograde in Leo on December 6th. Now, for people born under the zodiac sign of Taurus, you're looking a little rough around the edges these days. That's because the sun has been traveling through the zodiac sign of Scorpio, and Scorpio is your opposite sign on the wheel. It's the sign that's 6 months away from you in the agricultural year. Whenever the sun is traveling through your opposite sign, there's often a feeling of a drop in energy, a drop in confidence. And recently, you might have been involved in a situation where you picked up your toys and left the sandbox in a huff. All right. You might have been playing with other people in the sandbox. You might have been getting along. Um, you were maybe getting along on a project or an endeavor or some sort of joint enterprise. Things didn't go your way. You might have gotten angry, and like a child playing in a sandbox, you might have gathered your things together and left in a bit of a huff. What might have happened is that you may have turned down an offer or drawn a line in the sand and decided that you aren't going to budge on it. Or perhaps you slammed the door shut on a relationship or an association. Taurus is known for being stubborn, and it's known for being firm. You're a fixed sign, after all. What happens when Mars enters the zodiac sign of Leo is that fixed energy increases. There's an uptick in the stubbornness. There's an uptick in the resoluteness. There's an uptick in, this is the stand that I'm taking, and I'm not going to budge on it. And so when you add that kind of fiery Leo energy to your own natural earth energy, it looks like around the period of November 3rd and the couple of days following, it looks like you might have gone overboard. You might have made too strong a statement, or you might have been too final in the way that you came across. This is something that you want to be very aware of, during the period of time when Mars is traveling in Leo between November 3rd and November 27th. This might become a period of time where you get much more self-righteous, you get much more proud, you get much more domineering, you get much more resolute. I'm not going to talk to that person again, things like that. This is a period of time when you need to remember you were born under a Venus-ruled sign and not a Mars-ruled sign. So this kind of obstinance, this kind of combativeness doesn't really look good on you. Now, Mars turning retrograde in Leo on December 6th shows that this might be around the time that you have cooled down, that enough weeks have passed, that you're beginning to rethink the stance that you took with a colleague or perhaps even a loved one, and you might be experiencing a bit of remorse. Remorse is a fascinating word. The etymology behind the word remorse is to cut or to hurt again. So when we feel remorse, which is a type of regret, we're very sorry that we did such a thing. In that experience of remorse, we feel the pain again. We feel the injury that we exercised again, and it makes us like shudder. It makes us go, "Oh, I can't believe I did that. What a horrible sort of thing." So this might be a period of time around the retrograde of Mars in Leo in which you might be starting to feel like maybe I went overboard, maybe I was too tough, maybe I was too firm. Now you won't want to acknowledge that at first. Mars in Leo can make you very prideful. And so that feeling of you showing any kind of weakness or any sort of remorse isn't something that you're going to want to exhibit voluntarily. However, if the other person were to reach out to you, you would definitely take an audience. The king would definitely grant the person seeking to speak them an audience. But chances are you've made it pretty well known that you weren't to be talked to or bothered again. So, as the weeks pass after the December 6th period, you may begin to realize that perhaps not only were you too strong in the position that you took, but perhaps you were a bit too premature. Maybe you weren't open to a negotiation that could have been made. And so, what you're really going to start feeling after that December 6th period is a sort of second thoughts and maybe even regret. Now, is what you did originally wrong? Chances are, no, it wasn't. But there is such a thing as a right action being taken at the wrong time. And this looks like it may be one of those times. Indeed, Mars is retrograde, which lasts all the way until February 23rd, speaks to how long it may take for you to rethink the stand that you took and to maybe, just maybe, even apologize. Now, if you're born under the zodiac sign of Gemini, this Mars in Leo is going to be a fantastic time for you. You are having so much fun hanging out with a great group of people. These may be new people in your lives, new colleagues, new friends, maybe even neighbors. They're fun, they're funny, and they agree with just about everything you have to say. Now, as a Gemini, it's been a long time since you felt like the people in your life really got you, that they really see you for who you are. Everyone, it's human nature. Everyone wants to hang out with like-minded souls, with people who laugh at the same jokes, who love the same songs, and know what you're going to say before you say it. And this sextile energy between Gemini and Leo is especially strong. A sextile is an aspect that exists between two signs of similar gender. The male signs are the fire and air signs, the female signs being the earth and water. And nowadays we can refer to them as yang and yin signs. So if you're born under an air sign, then a sign that sextiles you would be a fire sign. And this sextile energy that I'm talking about with your Gemini sun and this Mars and Leo, it's really great for fanning the flames of your confidence, exuberance, and excitement. You're going to feel like anything is possible. However, this is also a period of time that you might be sort of getting carried away with this new group of people that you're hanging out with. This is one of those, shall we say, if somebody asked you to jump off the bridge, would you do it? This is the sort of question that mothers always ask of their children when they see that they're getting a little bit too carried away with the friends that they're hanging out with. And it's their way of saying, don't be so quick to get caught up in the enthusiasm of the people around you. When Mars turns retrograde, which means it reverses direction, it sort of switches its face from forward and confident and bold to maybe more retreating, shy, and you go first. I'll see what it looks like later. This Mars retrograde could bring out sentiments in the people that you're hanging out with, in which they're praising you, they're supporting you, they're saying you're really terrific, and they're even encouraging you to do things that they would never in a million years do themselves. Or maybe they're bringing out qualities in you that aren't really the best. Maybe you're staying out past curfew, you're partying a bit too much, or you're now starting to speak rashly and maybe even rudely where you didn't before. This is when each of us must be our own conscience. This is when each of us must be our own counsel. It's like the kid who gets singled out by the teacher for pulling a prank. When you say something like, well, everyone else is doing it, well, just because everyone else is doing it doesn't make it right. And this is the pang of conscience. This will be the sudden thought of reflection that will strike you on December 6th when Mars turns retrograde, and it will leave you with a heaping serving of food for thought. Now, let's go ahead and talk about Cancers and how Mars in Leo will impact you. Cancers, as a general rule, aren't known for making bold financial moves. Now, you may not be the cheapest sign of the zodiac, but you watch those shekels closely. And that's because you're as careful as a Capricorn when it comes to picking your way across an unknown terrain. There have been many times in your life when you have been caught up in an entangled financial situation, or when costs or crises have come swooping down like seagulls to gobble up your savings. Mars, traveling through the solar house of finances, is all about taking a bold financial move. So it may be time to make a big purchase, a major investment, or to expand upon your business. Now, this is going to make you feel nervous. It may even make you feel queasy or a little bit sick to your stomach, but it's the right way to go because you're never going to get anywhere continuing with the safe choices you've been making. Now, when Mars turns retrograde on December 6th, which is a reverse, it's a turnabout that takes place with the planetary energy in the sky. And of course, no sooner do you sink your money into a purchase or an investment than the winds change. The winds that were once filling your sails have changed direction, and your sails have flattened, and you're left there sort of adrift in the middle of the lake. This is going to make you want to clamber out of the boat and swim back to shore. This is going to make you want to stop where you are in your path and go back the way that you came. But don't. The reason I'm saying not to is because you really are on the right path. Not all new directions that we take are going to give us immediate results. Not all new paths we choose to follow come with guarantees. And Cancer can be very trepidatious. It can be very nervous about doing something, about doing anything that's new and different. But what you need to do is believe in the cue that Mars in Leo gave you, which is that you need to be more daring in the way that you approach finances or the way that you build on your finances. You need to be more daring, but you also need to connect to the energy that the Mars in Leo is bringing into your life. You also need to trust it. What you need to do in the end is also summon the courage that Mars in Leo brings, summon the courage to see things through to the end. If you're born into the zodiac sign of Leo, Mars in your sign is going to make you irrepressible. And this is a good thing, as long as you don't become overwhelming. Okay, what's good about irrepressible? Oh, irrepressible laughter, irrepressible humor, irrepressible energy, heat, charisma, magnetism. People are going to want to gather around you like children around a campfire, waiting to listen to the next story. There's something about you that's going to be especially magnetic and confident during this period of time, and it's a wonderful thing to be. Again, because Mars in Leo sort of arrives at the counter expecting to be served, and people are more than happy to go and serve, you want to sort of moderate your pace with that. You don't want to become too. Now, the reason I say this is because you were born under a ruling planet that is actually a star. All right, this is what makes Leo so unique and special and standalone. But as a star, you are a burning fire, a nonstop burning fire, and you don't always know how to gauge your temperature. Just like the sun doesn't gauge its temperature when it moves across the daytime sky. It's the seasons that gauge the temperature of the sun. All right, so that in the spring, it's not really that hot. In the autumn, its energy is fading. In winter, it's very remote. Things can be very cold. But it's summer, which is the season of abundance. Summer, when the sun is in Leo, it's summer that really comes out of the heart of the energy of a Leo. Now, if you compare late spring and early summer to when plants are growing and flowers are blooming and everything is looking wonderful and resplendent, to midsummer, all right, where the heat is really starting to become unbearable and too much, where I live, the summers can get very, very hot. So much so that the plants and the flowers that I have grown and have been admiring, and neighbors have been saying, I love your garden, and oh, thank you, and all these sorts of wonderful exchanges. Well, in the summer, what happens to the flowers, especially, is that they go into what I call a heat coma. The flowers open and they stay there. There's no new additional growth. They sort of open and they stay there. Some of them, like the roses, begin to burn around the edges of the petals, or the petals begin to burn. The heat is that intense. So a summer sun, which is a Leo sun, and when you add Mars in Leo to that solar energy, that's kind of like throwing gasoline on a fire, becomes even hotter. Okay, it becomes even overwhelming. And when you have that kind of an overbearing solar personality, it stunts growth. Instead of being an energy that fosters growth, welcomes growth, creates in the air aromas, many aromas are released through the heat of the sun. When it becomes too much, it becomes counterproductive. Another thing to watch out for in this time of Mars from November 3rd to November 27th, when it is moving towards a trine to the sun in Sagittarius, and it's building more heat and it's building more exuberance and it's building more fiery energy, the other thing to watch out for is, are you taking more than you're giving? If you're showing up at a counter and expecting someone to serve you and they show up right on the spot and you order them around, or if someone offers to do something for you and you say yes and you make the request and then maybe you add a third or a fifth or a 10th request to it, those should be signs that you are taking more than you are giving. Now, as I said, with this solar energy, people are apt to do the things that you want to do. They're apt to fulfill your requests and help you get the things that you want. But this is a problem that I've seen that's very similar to Neptune transits. When Neptune is transiting a sun that is very susceptible to Neptune energies and kind of even knows how to use it. When Neptune is strong by transit, it sort of exudes a hypnotic allure. And this can impact Pisces, along with the other water signs. What you kind of exude is this hypnotic aura where people are suddenly under your spell. They're suddenly willing to do whatever it is you tell them to do. And it can be a wonderful feeling, but what you have to remember is that that spell that they're under isn't going to last forever, that they'll wake from that Neptunian allure and they may regret the things that they said. They may be angry at you for having taken advantage of their susceptibility. There's a similar problem that can happen when Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo. People may begin with going and getting you the things that you want and making a place for you in line or at the table. But when Mars turns retrograde, like it will on December 6th, and begins its backwards motion, that's when things won't come as easily as they used to. Now, when things aren't coming as easily as they used to, there is a tendency, and it's a completely understandable human tendency, to redouble your efforts, to try even harder. But I would very much advise around this December 6th doing the opposite. What I would advise is that you actually take a step back and take in what's going on, because it may not be Mars turning retrograde in Leo that's the reason for people pulling away from you, as it may be your arrogance, it may be your self involvement, it may be your feeling like, I deserve this. In other words, simply put, you might have gone too far. So take this period of time to dial it back, to tone it down a bit, to perhaps be more giving than taking. Showing a little humility can help a great deal. Better yet, show a willingness to sacrifice. Follow the cues to be humble, follow the cues to be self-sacrificing, and you will find that people who are beginning to distance themselves from you will come back around to taking your side again. If you're born into Virgo, this period of time when Mars is traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo, it's going to make you do things that you would never have done in a million years. One of the things it's going to make you do, especially in this period of time between November 3rd and November 27th, is that it's going to make you make a grab for something. You're going to see something that you want and you're going to make a grab for it. Making a grab for something that's higher than what you would have set your sights on, or that's more than you feel comfortable making a grab for, as a Virgo, that's going to feel like it's a recipe for disaster. But there's a simple rule of thumb here, which it's better to have than to have not. In other words, better to have made the grab and seized the prize than to not have done it at all. And this is exactly what's going to be happening between November 3rd and November 27th, when Mars in Leo forms a trine to the Sun in Sagittarius. Now, you may be spending the entire time like, I can't believe that I'm doing this, and I'm so undeserving, or I don't have the credentials, or or I'm in over my head. And you may find that your friends or colleagues are actually being very encouraging. They're like, this is a really good thing. You deserve this. You should step up to the plate. You should volunteer your name. You should say that you can do this. Well, that might be exactly what you're feeling with this sort of reckless grab for something that's beyond your reach and actually having gotten it. So when Mars in Leo is firing up this gumption, when Mars in Leo is firing up this drive, this recklessness even, this is not the time to talk yourself out of what you want or to say, well, maybe it's not the right time and I should wait for a better time to come along. This is not the time to be dithering. This is not the time to retreat from the action. This is not the time to overthink or to have second thoughts. What you want to do is strike while the iron's hot when Mars is traveling through the burning sign of Leo. You have to own your opportunities. You have to own your advantages. This is what Mars in Leo is all about. Now, when Mars turns retrograde on December 6th, and that means it's going to do an about face in the sky, instead of traveling forwards, it's going to be traveling backwards, you're going to be plagued with doubt and anxiety. You're going to be like, oh my goodness, now that I've made a grab for this and I have it in my hands, other people are going to want it and they're going to be angry at me. They're going to want to fight me for this. And I don't know if I'm up to this task. What was I thinking? All right. And you may even, having won the Oscar, maybe want to give it away as soon as you can. But now that you have what you wanted to have, you're not going to want to give it up. In other words, you like owning, you like possessing, you like the opportunity that's yours, you like the advantage you have. Sometimes when we want something and we go through the ins and outs of whether we want it or not, we can talk ourselves out of what is a genuine impulse. And it's also a way of sort of distancing ourselves from something that we desire because we're afraid that it might be too much or that we will be rejected. But when you do something wild and impulsive, like Mars and Leo is going to make you do, suddenly there's a personal investment where there wasn't one before. And so all of those instincts kick in of wanting to protect what you have, of saying that this is yours, and wanting to defend your right, defend your win, defend your victory, defend your opportunity. This puts a fire in your belly. This puts a fire in your belly that makes things matter. And it's a wonderful fire in your belly, a fire that's been missing for the past few months. And that, Virgo, that is a good thing. For people born under the zodiac sign of Libra, this period of time when Mars is traveling through Leo is going to be a wonderful and exciting period of time for you. That's because Libra forms a natural sextile to Leo. The two of you are different signs, you're different elements, but the thing that you have in common is what we used to call in astrology gender. Astrology follows the four elements. There are two elements that are masculine or yang signs, and then there are two elements that are feminine and yin signs. Fire and air are yang, and earth and water are yin. So what happens when planets by proximity create a sextiling energy between your sign and a fire sign? And in this case, it's Leo. What happens is that a high wind will spread a fire. This type of energy comes coursing into your horoscope as an accelerant. So it heightens you and it broadens your perspective. It makes you confident and it makes you want the things that you want without apology. Now, one of the things that can happen here is that you will find yourself surrounded by people who have a better idea of what you should be doing than you do. Now, these may be higher ups, these may be friends of friends, or they may be mentors who really want you to succeed. And so you're going to be feeling a lot of support, you're going to be feeling a lot of encouragement, But at the same time, you may be fielding a lot of criticisms where these people might be saying, oh, you're being too nice, or you're being too indirect, or you need to toughen up and go in for the kill. Okay, so these people are going to have a better idea than you about how to be successful. You can't be nice all the time. You can't be courteous all the time. Sometimes you just have to bare your teeth and slash the air with your claws. So everyone is going to be talking to you as if you were born yesterday. Now, most zodiac signs, when they're being talked at or talked down to during a situation like this, might feel offended or like they have to prove themselves in some sort of way. But your secret weapon as a Libra, your secret weapon has always been knowing when to smile and nod in all the right places. In a conversation, you will smile and look interested and nod and, oh, yes, that's a really wonderful idea. And you can give this impression while someone is talking at you or talking down to you. You can give this impression that what they've imparted to you is extremely valuable, that it's very insightful, and you can't wait to hurry away from this conversation to go and apply what it is that they've just told you what to do. Libras are wonderful listeners, and they're wonderful at looking very agreeable and also always being non committal. So, a Libra can make you feel like the smartest person in the room, like someone who's just imparted the most sage wisdom that there is to impart. They will listen, they will smile, they will absolutely show you respect, even follow up questions. But in the end, a Libra is a cardinal sign, which means that a Libra is going to go ahead and do what they wanted to do all along. The other plus to being a cardinal sign, as a Libra, you will always get what you're after. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're the person who went after it. Chances are, being a Libra, you will exercise those magnificent powers of charm and persuasion and enlist people to go and do the pursuing and then come back and give it to you. Now, interestingly, in your case, Libra, it will be the surge of energy that will be happening on November 27th, courtesy of the Sun Mars trine, that may prove to be the more treacherous time. Certainly more treacherous than Mars turning retrograde in the sky on December 6th. Now, the reason why you want to be cautious during this period of time is because the Mars Sun trine is going to push you. It's going to push you to act before the time is right. And you'll be under a lot of pressure to do exactly that. But the time isn't right. It's not right for you. What you want to do is wait until after Mars turns retrograde on December 6th, because this reversal of energies, Mars is going after what it wants. And so this reversal of energies will create a turnabout. Typically, Mars wants to pursue relentlessly what it wants. This retrograde of Mars will create an about face, a reversal of energies, so that instead of you going after the prize, if you wait long enough and are patient, then the prize will come to you. For those of you born under the zodiac sign of Scorpio, you're going to want to be careful with Mars entering the zodiac sign of Leo on November 3rd. The reason for this, Mars has just formed an opposition to Pluto earlier on the same day. In other words, Mars reached the 29th degree of Cancer. It formed an opposition to Pluto at the 29th degree of Capricorn, which is a singular event because this will never take place in our lifetimes again. Yes, we'll have more Mars-Pluto oppositions, but they won't be involving the zodiac signs of Cancer and Capricorn. So this is going to create a very intense energy for you. This is going to create a very do or die type of energy for you. You're going to feel like you're fighting for something as if your life depended on it, that the stakes are high, and to surrender would be worse than defeat. So you're very charged. You're very more intense than usual when Mars moves out of the opposition to Pluto and steps over the threshold into the zodiac sign of Leo. So you're going to be engaged in fighting for something that you want, in championing something and advocating something, and you're going to feel like a lot of things depend on it. Maybe finances depend on it, your love depends on it, your survival depends on it. It's going to be hugely charged. Now, when Mars changes zodiac signs, there is a change in energy, but because the proximity of that opposition and Mars entering Leo on November 3rd is so close, you're literally carrying that do or die energy into the next sign. And so, what you want to do is really kind of let yourself slow down. It's kind of like speeding down the hill and going really, really fast. But if you squeeze the brakes, the bicycle will flip over itself. So, what you want to do is gently squeeze the brakes to bring the bike to a slower and slower speed so that it becomes more manageable. And that's really going to be your headspace, your heart space after November 3rd. Now, there's no rest for the weary with these particular planetary aspects, because no sooner do you come out of that opposition where you're feeling very much like you're fighting for your survival, or you're fighting for a claim that you've staked, you're fighting for something very important. No sooner does that pass, then the Mars and Leo will start to build up energy, fiery energy, as it approaches its trine to the sun on December 27th. What you need to acknowledge during this period of time is that you have a personal investment in how things are going to turn out. Now, that's kind of like a really ridiculous thing to say to a Scorpio. When does a Scorpio not have a personal investment in the way that things are going to turn out? Okay. You're born under Mars. You have a personal investment. All right. But the thing is, you're taking things too personally. You're acting too instinctually. It's not that you're overreacting, because it's not like dramatic and you're being, "Wah," it's not like that. What it is that you have such a focus on what it is that you want, that there can be a sort of ruthlessness or a relentlessness that might attach itself to your actions. So, what you want to do is sort of tap into those famous Mars qualities of showing cool under pressure, and with the added Scorpio element of making jokes at your own expense. And this would be a very good idea to do around November 27th, because that's when you will have a lot of this fiery energy coursing through your horoscope, and you're bound to be rash, temperamental, and provocative. Now, what's going to happen when Mars turns retrograde, when it reverses direction on December 6th, is that whatever you've been trying to achieve, whatever you've been trying to accomplish, whatever you've been trying to seize as yours, maybe it's a reward or it's a prize, there will be a technicality introduced. You could have had it, but you did this. And so there's a technical foul on what it is. Or maybe there's an inopportune postponement that's been introduced that keeps you from getting something that you richly deserve. Something's going to frustrate that Mars energy. Mars wants to move directly to what it is that it wants, but when it hits a retrograde, it reverses direction and starts moving away from what it wants rather than closer to what it wants. I think the easiest way of describing it to you is not so fast. You're about to pluck what it is that you want off the shelf, and there's a not so fast, and some sort of extenuating circumstance has reared its head and is spoiling your moment. Like I said, this could pertain to a judgment, a promotion, or a reward. What you want to do is not fight it, okay? Which is like, I earned this trophy, I'm taking it, and no one's taking it out of my hands. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is that if there is a process for review, if a panel of judges or authorities or whatever need to weigh in and examine the legitimacy of this, you have to let them do it, all right? And you have to trust in the process. Now, Scorpios aren't really good at having grabbed something and now having to give it back. Okay, that really that really goes against your Mars nature. Give it back, okay, because chances are it will be reviewed and you will get ultimately the approval and the reward that you're searching for. But you have to trust the process. You have to give it back. And if you do this, this will not only make you look really good, but it will give you a legitimacy to your claim for when Mars finally comes out of retrograde in February. Sagittarius, you've always felt like you were special, but now everyone can see it for themselves thanks to Mars traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo. This gives you more than just a halo to wear. Mars in Leo gives you a fixity of purpose, something that's been missing from your life for a very long time. Sagittarius is a mutable sign, which means that Sagittarius is a changeable sign. And what can happen with Sagittarians is that they can connect to something like a higher purpose or something that's very inspiring, but it doesn't always go the distance. It doesn't always keep them going when the initial excitement has faded. And so Sagittarians are sort of famous for, well, I was into this, but now I'm into something else. They don't really go the entire distance. That's because Sagittarians are associated to long journeys and to pilgrimages. They're not really associated to track meets. Sagittarians are more sort of like, I'm going to go find myself in Timbuktu, or I feel like going to Indonesia. Okay, so Sagittarians go and make long journeys halfway across the world or to places that they'd never been before with the expectation that they might accidentally stumble upon the very thing that they've been looking for. So, this kind of meandering quality to Sagittarius is also associated with exploration and discovery. Sagittarians will often say, I don't know what I'm looking for. And that's the whole point. Because what would be the point of discovery or exploration if I already knew what it is that I'm looking for? So Sagittarians are uniquely open to the universe, uniquely open to the idea that if it's meant to be, it will be, and anything can happen. Sagittarians are known for their enthusiasm. They're the fire sign most likely to be, that was the best thing ever, as they exclaim with all bolds, caps, and exclamation points. All right, whatever they get excited about is something that they've never experienced before. And if they did, this was better than the last time. So Sagittarians like to keep the fires of enthusiasm burning at a full roar. And part of the reason they do this is because they are very afraid of what will happen if those flames start to burn low. Contrary to popular opinion, Sagittarians, for all of their beliefs and all of their testimonies of faith, are actually plagued by a lot of doubt, which is why they will try to keep doubt at bay with things like pep talks, Pollyanna catchphrases of positivity, and spiritual mantras. The fixity of this Mars in Leo is something that's going to keep that flame burning at a constant. All right. It's something in which you will feel like there's a purpose that you've connected with, a drive that you've connected with, that you're really getting somewhere with something that you want to do. And This is something that will even prevail when Mars turns retrograde on December 6th. This is when you may struggle. I don't know if it's so much struggle with the idea of faith or a sense of purpose, but perhaps struggle with the idea of what this new sense of faith or this fixed feeling of purpose is going to do with your life. Sometimes a Sagittarian struggle can be more about, am I sure that I want to go the distance with this? Am I sure that I want to stick with just this? Sagittarians like to always look at other things, other places that they could go. So when the Mars in Leo gives you this fixity of purpose, and then it turns retrograde. So it's the feeling that Mars in Leo is almost saying, well, if you don't want to follow through with this purpose, if you don't want to push yourself, if you don't want to challenge yourself, if you don't want to raise your sights and take your performance to the next level, well, there's the door. It's open. You can always leave if you want. That's what I see happening with this Mars turning retrograde. It can be this feeling of that the Sagittarius is getting, that as a Sagittarius, you're getting into something that you might feel out of your league or out of your depth. On one hand, you're really excited about it, but on the other hand, it's a very real commitment. And Mars retrograde will give you that opportunity of an out to leave if you want to. And you may sort of wrestle with that for a little while after December 6th. But I would imagine what you're going to find the more that you say, well, maybe I don't want this, or maybe I want to go back the way I came, the more that you're going to find that you can't give up this new sense of purpose, that you can't give up this drive. And so this is how, in your own process, you may go from resisting or escaping something to gradually coming round full circle and accepting and embracing it for the life change that it really is. If you're born under the zodiac sign of Capricorn, this Mars in Leo transit is going to have a curious effect on you. It's going to hit you where you live. Now, if we're talking about Capricorns, where you live always has something to do with money, all right? So Capricorns are always ready for like, okay, what kind of financial hit am I going to take? What kind of loss am I going to have to experience or brace myself for? In the way that the houses are set up in astrology, this isn't the solar house of your finances. Where Mars is showing up in Leo happens to deal with the solar house of your feelings about finances. So to make myself clear, there's a house that deals with finances, cut and dry, add up the numbers, and this is what the sum is. And then there's a house that deals with your feelings about finances. And usually those feelings about your finances have less to do with confidence and pride and more to do with insecurity and anxiety. And this is what the Mars in Leo is going to be stirring up. What it's going to make you ask in your life is, why do you find yourself continually in positions, maybe they're financial positions or maybe they're career situations, where you are financially beholden to someone else? Now, anyone can say, we're all financially beholden to someone else, okay? We're financially beholden to someone that we borrow money from, and now we have to pay it back. Just as the person who lent the money is financially beholden to the person who has to pay it back. But for a Capricorn, you may feel that there's a particular situation in your life where you are financially beholden to someone else. Maybe it's a boss or an authority. Maybe it's a spouse who makes more money. Maybe it's a business partner or a patron. Let's say you're a sort of Capricorn who owns your own business or you run your own business. You may be financially beholden to employees showing up, like, for instance, Boeing, where the workers went on strike and Boeing finds itself suddenly in a position where it owes a tremendous amount of money just to keep up operating costs, and that this strike has actually cost them quite a bit of money that they're going to have to make up probably by cutting jobs and streamlining and things like that. So people who are beholden aren't always the people on the bottom. People who are beholden can be the people on top that when they're faced with a strike or a revolt, suddenly find themselves beholden to these people who have a greater force and a greater power than they did. Let's talk about fear. Fear is such an important word to a Capricorn because it's tied up with their ruling planet, Saturn, the planet of test, trials, and tribulations. Fear is what keeps you in your place. But what kind of fear is it? Well, it may be a fear of having no money, a fear of doing without, a fear of being disposable or kicked to the side of the curb. This fear, which is something that Capricorns constantly struggle with, is what makes you hide your light under a bushel. Now, no one's saying during this period of time that Mars is moving through the zodiac sign of Leo that you have to break out and be on your own. No one's saying you have to break out of your confines and run free, Capricorn. It's kind of like Born Free. I don't know that theme song from Born Free, House of the Lion. Where Capricorn must be born free and relearn nature and no one's saying you have to do that, Capricorn. So you can take it easy, all right? That's not what's going on with Mars moving through the zodiac sign of Leo. Besides, if you broke out of your confines and the place that you find yourself in your life, you wouldn't even know what to do with yourself. That's because Capricorns pride themselves on their responsibilities and obligations. They pride themselves on shouldering the burdens because shouldering burdens makes you solid, strong, and steadfast. However, Mars in Leo is going to make you more assertive. Mars in Leo is going to make you more affirmative in regards to the financial rut or predicament that you happen to find yourself in. Mars in Leo is going to encourage you. It's going to prevail upon you. It's going to push you to do something that's bold and even a tad reckless. Now, it's going to be hard for you to do something new and different regarding a financial situation when you have Mars traveling through the zodiac sign of Leo. And that's because Mars traveling through this particular angle of your solar chart is probably going to introduce expenses and costs that you weren't foreseeing. So whenever an unforeseen cost or expense is introduced into a Capricorn's life, your immediate response is to drain the moat and raise the drawbridge. Okay, but the whole point of Mars being here isn't to reinforce old patterns. The point of Mars being here in Leo is to prioritize, to separate the things that you want to do from the things that you feel like you have to do. And this could lead you down a very creative path where you do some unexpected streamlining based on unforeseen challenges, where you reconnect to your talents, to your gifts, and your ambition in a way that you haven't in a very, very long time. Capricorns have a tendency to really put their faith in the slow, steady climb. That it's going to take me a long time to get from here to there, and that if I commit myself to the slow, steady climb, I will get there eventually. But sometimes it's good to have our feet held to the fire by circumstances that are beyond our control. It makes us leap rather than repeat what's formulaic. And that's exactly what Mars in Leo is here to do. For people born under the zodiac sign of Aquarius, you're going to feel like Daniel, who's been suddenly thrown into the den of lions. All right, it's been done in such a way as to punish you It's been done in such a way as to test you, and people who have thrown you into the arena like this aren't expecting you to survive. They're not expecting you to win. Little do they know Aquarian tenacity. So, being an Aquarius dealing with Mars and Leo is a bit of a mixed bag. On one hand, there is that sextile energy that I was talking about with Leo and all the other air signs. But that sextile energy only works for signs that essentially flank the sign that we're taking into account. Let me make that easier to follow and understand. We're talking about Mars and Leo. So Mars and Leo is immediately going to form a sextile to the two air signs that flank it. It's going to form a sextile to Gemini, which is an air sign, and it's going to form a sextile to Libra, which is an air sign. Aquarius is not one of the two air signs that flank the zodiac sign of the lion. In fact, Aquarius is opposite the sign of the lion. It's 6 signs away from Leo on the zodiacal circle, and it's 6 months away from Leo in the calendar year, where the sun is warm and resplendent in the zodiac sign of Leo, and perhaps a little bit, maybe too much, too hot, too burning. The sun in Aquarius is remote and cold and distant. Let me remind you very quickly that astrology was created in the Northern Hemisphere. And so that's why the zodiac signs, by temperament, are tied into the seasons as they are experienced here in the Northern Hemisphere. So whenever you have Mars opposite you, then you are going to engage Mars as an opponent. Okay. It's not on your side. Okay. If anything, it's coming at you, or it's entrenched itself in a position that it's not going to move from. If you take the idea of a castle under siege, if the castle is being attacked, then the denizens of the castle will drain the moat and they'll raise the drawbridge and they will prepare to wait the enemy out. And so the enemy is outside its walls, it's there waiting. At first, one is saying, oh, well, the enemies can wait there forever, because if you're in a castle, that's great. You're fortified, you're not going to get taken. But the enemy outside the wall, if it chooses to wait, can cut off supply chains, it can cut off food, it can cut off water, and it can force the people who are in the castle to relent or surrender, to lower the drawbridge and to give up. The enemy can basically have waited them out. So with an opposition, you have two separate camps. All right. I like to liken oppositions to polarized camps. And my favorite example are the Democrats and Republicans in Congress these days. We think of them as arguing and fighting, but actually what they're doing is refusing to work with one another, pointing fingers and treating us all to these elaborate and rather immature excuses of not working with one another. But an opposition is an entrenched camp in an opposite place. What would be something that a Mars and Leo would find a strength, would prevail upon, would almost assail an Aquarius with? And that would be the fires of the ego. So during this period of time that Mars has entered the zodiac sign of Leo, and particularly in the run up to the trine from November 3rd to November 27th, the trine perfects on November 27th. As an Aquarius, you may feel under a lot of pressure from people to give up your resistance to something that may be more popular or more prevalent, to bend the knee if you're standing on principle, to relent, to give in. As a result, you may find yourself surrounded by these terrific these egos that want you to submit, these egos that want you to say you're wrong, these egos that want you to give up your cause. What happens in a situation like this is that instead of seeing yourself at odds with the egos, you could almost sort of do a sort of psychic jujitsu, okay, which is to use the ego's power and strength against them. I don't know if you remember those movies from the 60s with judo, where the weaker person uses the other person's weight and impressive presence against them to flip or to pin to the ground, you're in a situation where you can use an opponent's strength against them. You're also in a situation where you can center yourself in yourself and bring down the temperature around you. And this comes from a kind of confidence, not the confidence where, you're being full of yourself or you're being robust or you're being boastful or anything like that, but a silent or quiet confidence. Think of Daniel in the lion's den. When Daniel was put into the lion's den, when he was surrounded by these animals, which were famous for eating people because they were kept deliberately half starved, Daniel pretty much just stands there. He becomes a quiet, and the lions pace around him. They don't really know what to do. They might roar, they might swipe their claw, but they continue pacing around him. He kept this centeredness, and eventually they sat down. They lie down on the ground, which is what lions do. And this is how Daniel showed himself to be a righteous man. This was one of the tests that Daniel had to pass to show that there was something special about Daniel and that he had a message that was worth listening to. In a world where we are surrounded by circus acts, this kind of centeredness, this kind of standing in the center of the storm and not letting yourself be pushed over or overwhelmed by it, this can be a tremendous strength, Aquarius. This can be a tremendous strength, but it becomes a strength when your mettle has been tested. And that will be around December 6th when Mars turns retrograde. This will be when you have shown that you can do what you can do, that you have a message that's worth listening to, that people are showing you respect, but then you have to follow that up with a message worth hearing. And you have to follow that up with an authority that's worth respecting. And that, in its own way, may be a steeper challenge than being surrounded by lions at the bottom of a pit. Pisces, although you're still enthralled with faraway places or focused on projects that you believe will give you greater freedom in your life, Mars entering the zodiac sign of Leo on November 3rd insists that you answer to things much closer to home. And that's because the workaday structure of your life is changing. Maybe it's a matter of priorities that have to be answered, or a matter of scheduling and managing your time and your resources. In any case, you need to devote more time to your responsibilities at work and at home. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. You're not going to like it. The whole point is to escape from these things, but that simply won't be possible with Mars stoking other people's demands and expectations. You're going to have to placate the dissatisfied, as well as take a more positive approach to managing your responsibilities and obligations so that they don't continue to dominate you. Now, what do I mean by that? Sometimes when we wake up in the morning and we say, oh, I've got all these things that I have to do today, and, I can't believe that I have to face this load of demands and responsibilities, we can feel tired and fatigued before the day even begins. We can feel like we want to just give up. We can feel like we want to bury our head back under the pillows or maybe sneak out the window and go someplace else. And a lot of times, Pisces can use that anxiety by escaping from or postponing or putting off for tomorrow the things that they can do today because it seems not only so overwhelming, but it's really kind of a bore. It's really kind of tedious. It's really getting in the way of them enjoying their joie de vivre. And so Pisces will sort of put off the things that they need to do, and then they will also be tortured by the guilt of not having gotten around to doing these things. What's nice about a Mars in Leo in this particular position of your solar horoscope is that a Mars in Leo is going to push you to manage these forces in your life. In other words, the Mars in Leo is going to push you to be a lion tamer, for lack of a better way of putting it. Instead of being overwhelmed by the gaping jaws of, whoever needs something from you now, the Mars in Leo gives you the whip, it gives you the chair, it gives you the loud voice, so that you can tame and you can manage that lion. You can tame and you can manage that overwhelming schedule that's hungry, that wants to devour your time and your interests and your soul all at once. So, the best way to address these sorts of obligations and responsibilities is to spend more time fulfilling them and less time trying to slip out of them. If you sort of reverse the way that you see the situation, if you commit yourself to, okay, I have to get this done, that done, and this done, rather than I don't want to do it and now I'm like plagued with anxiety and guilt about not doing it. If you take the more proactive stance of fulfilling these responsibilities and obligations, you'll begin to see over a period of time that you're actually beginning to clear your plate and that you're freeing up your time and energy. You're freeing up your time and energy so that you can start doing the things you want to do rather than laboring away under the chores that you have to do. On a closing note, Mars will be in Leo for an extended period of time. Usually, Mars spends about maybe 6 weeks traveling through an astrological sign. But because Mars is turning retrograde, that means it's moving backwards over the ground that it just previously traveled. What that does is extend the period of time from 6 weeks to, in some cases, 6 months. Now, you won't have 6 months of Mars retrograding in the zodiac sign of Leo. Indeed, Mars will be in Leo from November 4th to January 6th. That's when it retrogrades back down into the zodiac sign of Cancer after January 6th. And it is in Cancer until April 17th, when Mars, having turned direct in the zodiac sign of the Crab, re-enters the sign of the Lion. So Mars re-enters Leo on April 17th, and it's there until June 17th. So this long protracted retrograde, and then moving forward again, it will introduce about faces. It will introduce delays and postponements. Mars finally finishes up its time in Leo on June 17th. That's when it will finish the job that it set out to do when it first entered the zodiac sign of the Lion on November 3rd. If you enjoyed what you saw, please press the like button. It helps more than you know. If you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. I've had such a wonderful time visiting with you this week, and I can't wait to get together next time on Christopher Renstrom Astrology.